Hi, everyone. I'm DJ Lani Love. Thank you so much to everyone who just joined me for my Viet Trap set. Now we're going to talk about another one of my favorite genres of music, Vietnamese American New Wave. And I'm so excited because we have a special guest and filmmaker, Elizabeth I.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Grand Park, for having us. We are very excited to be here. And we're so excited to share more about New Wave with all of you.
Yes, our LA Voices, thank you for having us be a part of your program. So we'll start by talking about what is Vietnamese New Wave. It's a genre of music that was from the 80s, from Vietnamese Americans, and it doesn't exactly link up to this sound that we associate with New Wave. So, like, a lot of us think New Order, Depeche Mode. It is from that era, but it's kind of more similar to like Italo disco artists like Modern Talking are kind of the sound of Viet New Wave, but it's also a little bit broader than that, right, Elizabeth?
Right. So, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's exclusive because definitely people that listen to Vietnamese New Wave also listen to the broader genre of New Wave, like the Depeche Mode and The Cure and Duran Duran. They kind of anything from the 80s with that synth sound or synth instrumentation fell under that umbrella. And specifically for Viet New Wave, it was a lot of the artists were German, and it was Euro disco was kind of like this. Um, Subgenre that was created, and it's a I guess it would be a subgenre of disco almost. It was like a disco kind of sound and tempo that was using synthesized instrumentation, and very much from the research that I've done was inspired from like the Giorgio Moroder's and Kraftwerk, and then it became kind of this own brand, mostly out of Germany, but also Italy and France and Switzerland, even Austrian bands came out of that. So it was a little bit of this sidestep to the stuff that we generally refer to as New Wave here in America.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I actually love Vietnamese New Wave so much is that signature, like synthesized sound. It's very dated, like time capsule vibe, but it's all so dancey and very like happy and joyous in that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was what really drew me to the project. I was just thinking about, um, when I was pregnant specifically, I was like, what story am I going to tell as a filmmaker and share with my daughter this story? And I knew it was time to like step away from all the war stories, all the trauma porn that we've seen, you know, specifically white men tell about the Vietnamese community through movies like Apocalypse Now or Platoon, or even Ken Burns with his 10 hours, of the Vietnam War from a very much American white perspective. And I think, I was like, I want to tell a happy story about our people. I want to tell a happy story about the resettlement, the rebuilding, and the rebirth of a Vietnamese diaspora identity. And what better way through music and culture, and New Wave just felt like the right thing because I don't think very many people knew about it. When I started to ask around about the bands, even talking to my own husband, I was like, hey, have you ever heard about Modern Talking or CC Catch? They had like these big hits, and he's like, what are you talking about? So yes, in terms of New Wave, it is very unique and special, and it was never, from what I've learned through my researches, it was never played in um, U.S. radio. It didn't chart. I think there are a few exceptions, but very, very rarely would anybody have heard of these bands.
Yeah, it's so serendipitous that we were put in touch like earlier this year because I just was on my personal journey to collect more Vietnamese music, not tied to any specific goal or project. I just felt like, hey, it might be kind of fun to collect more music from the Vietnamese, like um, just diaspora, whether it's people in Vietnam or Viet Americans making music. and I just gravitated so naturally to the new wave sound. And then a bunch of people forwarded me your Instagram when, because I just did one of those like Instagram posts like, hey, does anyone have any artists or CDs from your parents or whatever? And some mutual friends had sent me your link, but also strangers as well. Were like, hey, check out this Instagram account. Um, and it was just so great to see somebody was starting to document this and bring stuff that I think could have easily been lost and never brought to the digital era.
Oh, I definitely don't want to take credit for bringing it into the digital era. There are definitely people that have written articles, bloggers, and other people that have kind of highlighted it, as well as the artists themselves, like the people who were, like the Linda Chang Dais and Tai Tai and all of them kind of still making that effort to revive the music in the Orange County Viet diaspora scene. But specifically, I think in terms of creating a presence on social media,
Yeah.
that was a way for sharing. Really, I was going down and doing all of this research and just realized that the archives that I could find online were pretty sparse. And of what I could find, it was very pixelated, low res solution videos and photographs that I just realized, beyond um, the glitz and the glam of the musicians that were making the music of the time that had documentation, there was very little around the scene and the people that had gathered around it, because I have all these stories from family, friends of family, and friends of friends, that said, oh, my parents or my uncles and my aunties listened to this music. And creating the Instagram was a way to crowdsource photos, was a way to crowdsource videos, and it just kind of I didn't know if anybody was ever going to write me or share anything, but as soon as we shared it, I had a few friends that started to repost on their stories, and all of these materials came in. So it's a very small following, but they're very engaged. Everyone's very engaged, and I'm so grateful to everybody that has, submitted it, photos and videos. All of that hopefully will be shared soon in the years to come, and I hope that some of it will actually make it into the film.
Yeah. So did you listen to new wave growing up, like as a kid?
I did. So I'm a child of the 80s, and it wasn't my music because I came of age in the 90s, and hip hop and even gangster rap and all of that was really my sound. But in terms of being a little kid, I saw my uncles and aunties who were in their teens, and my parents and their friends and stuff in their 20s and 30s were listening to this music, so it was always playing in the background. Of course, I loved it as a kid. You don't like have you haven't quite formulated your tastes yet, so
Right.
whatever's in the background, and that was definitely on repeat all the time, on the weekends before they went out, as they get ready to party. All of it was always in the car, so I heard it all the time, and it was something that I started to play again recently in the last few years, and hearing it, you're like, oh man, this stuck with you forever because I still know all the words.
Yeah.
So,
Awesome.
it's like probably like some white American kid who's like, I listened to the Beatles growing up. They still probably know it, even if they take a lot of distance from it at some point.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it's no comparison because it only played so much in a very short window of time in my childhood. But I still remember those songs, and it still makes me very nostalgic for that time.
And do you speak Vietnamese?
I'm like, you're really gonna ask. I do speak Vietnamese, not well though. I'd say like a 3-year-old's proficiency, maybe 4-year-old. I mean, I can get like basic food, directions, number, and
Yeah.
ask. I can have, you know, um, superficial conversations, but I wouldn't be able to talk about politics or religion or anything like that.
But you know the songs, so that's something.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. But I have no idea what I'm saying. I know some of the songs, like it's, because they sing a lot of it, it's in English and Vietnamese, so you get the idea. They're always like, I think that's what's so special about it is like they're
Yeah.
the artists from, Europe, those, the Germans, the French, the Italians that were singing these songs, but the Vietnamese, I think what makes it so special is that they took that music and they weren't just playing it. It was like these Vietnamese artists that embraced it and made it their own. And they said, we're going to sing these songs, but we're going to translate them and we're going to sing in Vietnamese and English, or French and English, or French and Vietnamese. So I think that's something that's really unique about it, beyond like, oh, it's a genre of 80s music that we don't really know about. It's like they actually took it and just made it something of their own.
Yeah,
Even the compositions. Yeah.
that was another thing I wanted to bring up about it. I think the fact that a lot of these songs are sang in sometimes one, like English and Vietnamese, or sometimes throw in French, three languages, makes it such a very unique piece of culture. And also makes it so fun to share, like, with audiences now. Like, I feel like, at least, to my Twitch audience, and like Club Mesh community, like they love when I sprinkle in Viet New Wave tracks, because there's something that they can understand, and then something that's very foreign and like new to them. It's so fun to play. And sometimes it will be an instrumental from a lesser known 80s track. So they'll be like, it sounds familiar. And I'm like, you think you know, but you actually don't know this song. Or at least I'd be surprised if you knew this version.
Yes.
So,
Yes. Yeah, I think just riffing off of that, like it always, even like watching the music videos, I always feel like I'm in some sort of parallel universe, because even when you watch them and you go, gosh, this looks like it would have been on MTV, but it's all Asian faces and they're all doing like really weird things that, I felt like the 80s and the MTV culture was very experimental. And that was kind of, another big draw for me. Obviously the music and the memories, but the other part is like the idea of like looking at artifacts of the past and then saying, this all is familiar. I know all of this, but it's
yeah.
all these people that I didn't really, I didn't see like in my life growing up. But my parents did, and it wasn't something that was playing on MTV.
Uh-huh.
It was something that you had to specifically go out and buy the VHS tape of it. So if you
Right.
weren't watching it, you didn't know. So now I'm like seeing things that maybe I remember in the background, but I wasn't actually watching. Uh,
Yeah.
or now I'm like, wow, I actually never had a chance to see that. And I'm really proud of um, our
Totally.
our elders for having had the guts to do this stuff.
Yeah. Like, I think sometimes it just it's a matter of, becoming an adult and really being able to look back and appreciate what it is and what it was. Because I think as a kid, it's just like, you don't really understand what music is, as what what it's expressing, or any of that. It's just like, it's just on and it's around, it's fun. And then I think in recent years, as I've um, grown up, I'm appreciating my Vietnamese heritage more, and also just in awe of these artists that came from a foreign country and like created joy for themselves, a space for themselves.
Yes, I love that you brought that up. I mean, that is really a big part of it. I know I said it a little bit about it earlier, that these narratives have been shared by a lot of non-Vietnamese people. And it's something that it's not like if you are, in this mode of rebuilding your life, that it's all tragedy all the time, right? Like this is one of
Mhm.
those things. It's before safe spaces was a thing, was a phrase that we threw around saying, oh, we need to find our safe spaces to share and build and create. This was it. New wave or the music industry having to come together around something creative or to share culture, was their safe space, was their way to express joy or to share joy again, and to have memories of the past, because it wasn't like, well, we're just listening to Euro disco. It was also a way to say, okay, we're singing in Vietnamese, we're bringing our families together. And I love that you actually said earlier that it was so much fun.
Yeah.
It's like they have to build these things, right? Because you're not like going to just keep revisiting and, um, keep remembering only traumatic things about a past of losing a homeland and then having to rebuild. Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask, like, on a personal level, do your parents or family talk about kind of their experience in immigrating to the States? Because I know a lot of Asian American families, there's parents don't really talk about that journey, that experience. So I was curious what it's like for you and your family.
I think I told you about this, a little bit about this, in our previous conversations, but it was really hard growing up, to find that pride in our culture, because a big part of it was you cannot talk about the past. My grandfather was in re-education camp. He was a captain in the war in the army, and it was a lot of devastating things happened to my family and other people, like extended family and friends. So, you grew up not really knowing that much about your culture because you weren't asked to participate in that kind of like excavating of history and culture. And I think the other part of it is because of that, you know, because of the rebuilding and the resettling aspect of it, we're all kind of like reaching to prove our Americanness. I think there's a lot of conversations about that now where you're like, hello, of course I'm American. Like, what more can I do to prove this to you? Right. Like you're
Right.
with all of this AAPI hate around, but it's, yeah, it was really difficult growing up. And now that rediscovery has been such a source of pride for me to understand why we couldn't talk about those things at home.
Yeah.
It's like you don't want to re-traumatize your family. You don't want to re-traumatize, um, you know, other people who are going through things like your elders. But it's the idea of regurgitating this past or having this past and revisiting it in a way that's joyful and really honors that journey that they made, that has felt very satisfying to me in the last few years and even beyond, because I feel like this kind of rediscovery of my Vietnameseness has been such a journey.
Yeah.
And New Wave has been I feel like it's been the icing of a lot of learnings in the last decade of my life.
I love how beautifully you just articulated all of that. I mean, as you were talking about it, get like a little emotional because yeah, I feel like it's very I don't want to bring up traumas that my parents went through, but I also would love to like learn about it, you know? And I think in some ways, music is like that fun piece to talk. Yeah.
I, I feel for you so much because I'm very emotional as well. Like that's one of those things you talk about these things and I of course I can't completely avoid talking about that trauma because obviously you kind of hide away in these spaces. You hide away in your music, you hide away in your work, right? Our parents work so hard and you're like, why didn't they understand me? And we can start to think about, oh, they worked night and day. We never had those conversations. But when did you have time to have those conversations when you're like, the first thing they thought about was like, can we pay the bills? Are we going to make this work? Are we going to feed our kids? Are they going to get to the right schools? Are they going to make it to the next level in their lives, not speaking English? And so they try to like strip you away from the very thing that now as somebody who is American, who's firmly rooted in this country, that you're like, no, my strength is in knowing who I am and knowing about my past. So obviously you can't just like say, oh no, this is just about Viet Joy. It's about like unpacking what that is like, these are the moments that they tried to like celebrate identity, celebrate community, celebrate each other and share. It's
Yeah.
so much bigger than New Wave, right?
Yeah.
I'm calling the documentary New Wave. And of course I'm exploring a music called New Wave,
Right.
but it's really like this new wave of identity, of culture, of people, of traditions that we're unpacking all of that. And it's going to be a long time, before we really understand what it is, or even if we do, we just have to do the work and
Yeah.
understand why some things were hidden from us or why we didn't have those conversations growing up with our parents, or lamenting like I didn't have all the conversations I wish I had with my grandparents before they passed away.
Yeah.
because we're constantly treading like what's okay, what's not okay. And as kids, you just kind of like accept what you're given, which is like, don't ask about like things that are tragic about the past, just move forward.
Yeah. And my parents have straight up just said like, oh, we didn't share it with you because we thought it was too depressing. Like, but if you don't share these stories, they literally will just die. Um, in working on your project, and I think you've met some of the artists from the new wave era, right? Like some of the creators.
Yes. I guess I have met with, I don't know if you mean the original German artist, but yes, I went to France with one of the DJs of the era from the 80s.
Yeah.
So I went with him because he was having a concert in December 2019 in Paris, and Sandra was there, and Thomas Anders from Modern Talking was at that concert, and then who else have I met? I've met, oh my gosh, why is her name escaping me right now? Oh, Leanne Ross.
Yeah.
Big song is "Say You'll Never." She came here to Orange County, so I got to meet a few of those original and German artists. I think Sandra is Dutch and German, but in terms of the original Vietnamese diaspora ones, that's Linda Chiang Dai and Tai Tai, and I've been on calls with a number of elders from the community, and I'm so excited for the film to come together because it's it's a lot of history that was very hard to find and piece together. I hope I can do it justice because I know I only have an hour and a half for the documentary, but I
Yeah.
feel like just is the tip of the iceberg in terms of what needs to be documented.
And how did you start your journey with, getting in this project, learning more about the era and the artist? Like, what was the start of your rabbit hole into this?
It it was what I had said earlier, was being pregnant. It was for being pregnant for the first time and thinking, I've been making films for so long, and a lot of the stories, they resonate with me. Of course, I want to, tell the story about like wage equity and gender inequality, and just unpack that BS around the NFL. Like that was the last film that I made called A Woman's Work: The NFL's Cheerleader Problem. They weren't paying their cheerleaders. That resonated with me. I made a film about the breakdance hip hop scene. It was a narrative in Saigon that I got to film and work with all these amazing artists and friends in Saigon. And then, there's so many other films that I had made throughout the course of my career, but none that specifically spoke to my personal experience. And I kind of always touched on things like, oh, this one, speaks to me, and the messaging is around women, and this one's around like, an artistic endeavor, or, this one is with in Vietnam, something I always wanted to do. But this one very specifically is like my childhood, and, understanding my family and understanding what they were doing and how they found joy. And while I was pregnant, I was just like, I want to leave a story behind that's personal, very personal to me. Um, Something that I can feel proud of, and something that my daughter can watch and not say, oh yeah, I know about Vietnam. I watched it because some white guy made a movie about the Vietnam War. Like I want to make my own story that's not about like, and you can find it. I'm sure there's other people that have made stories about resettlement, but I just felt like I need to add my take on it, and that I want that take to be joyful, and it can touch on what was traumatic about the past, but mostly set in a space of joy and freedom and creative expression.
Yeah, I am so excited to see your project, because, like you said, hasn't been it hasn't been presented by Vietnamese, like American, creative storytelling, and there hasn't been enough focus on the joy. So excited to see it. Well, I think we'll wrap things up so we can pass things on for our LA voices. But thank you again, Elizabeth, for joining us. So great to hear more about your project and dive into the topic of New Wave.
Yay. Thank you so much, Lani. I'm so grateful for what you're doing. I'm so happy to be connected to another, Vietnamese American sister, and just know that we're putting out joy in the world. And I'm so excited for more conversations and hopefully a collaboration. I want to have a party with you.
Yes, definitely. Can't wait.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye.